Okay, TXC Tells All crew, we back with another panel. As you can tell by the title, is Who Does It Better? We have some special guests today. We're going to talk about whether who's the better lawyer, men or women. So before we get into it, I'm going to briefly introduce one of our special guests. If you are on YouTube, you follow Marcus, the debt-free dad, on his channel. He's a husband, a dad, a lawyer for over 10 years, and a YouTuber. And he specializes in criminal litigation, federal investigation, and the False Claims Act violations. So thank you, Marcus, the debt-free dad, for joining us today on our little panel.
Hey, I appreciate it. I'm ready to go to war. I'm ready.
We chose the right one.
That's what we like to hear. That's what we like to hear. All right. So we also have representing for the men today, Jacques Leeds. He is an attorney here in Houston, Texas. He does employment law, personal injury, and criminal law. He's the owner of Leeds Law Firm. So if you're in the Houston area or even Georgia and Maryland, he practices there too. Hit up Leeds Law Firm. So he's going to be represented with Marcus for the men today.
Welcome, Mr. Leeds.
Thank you.
We'll go easy on you. This is your first time on our channel. We hope that both of y'all will come back again, so we won't scare you away. But I think this is a obviously controversial topic, so it's going to bring people from both sides of the fence. So that's what we're here for. So if you have watched our other channel, our other videos, we do a little icebreaker before we kind of get into the topic. So Tracy's going to start off with a little icebreaker to loosen our guests up, and then we're going to jump right into the discussion. So Trace.
All right, so we're going to test your knowledge a little bit here, men. What percentage of lawyers do women make up? So how much of the percentage of women and men? For women, how much percentage do women make up of lawyers? What do you think?
Okay, I'm gonna pass it to Brother Jacques. Go come out with the first response, brother.
How close you can get?
I think if I had to guess, I would say women make up 35%.
Okay, Marcus.
I would actually, I don't know. I think the system is kind of biased, so I would probably say 20.
Okay, so Jacques, you get it on that one because it's 37.4%. So you were pretty close.
Oh, nice.
35%. Yep, 37.4%. So what about, we're all Black attorneys on here. So let's just shift a little bit for a second. What about Black attorneys, male and female? What percentage do you think Black attorneys make up of lawyers out here?
5%.
Yeah, I think I was about to say I think it's like 3, maybe.
5 on the money, 5%.
It was 5 exactly. Okay.
Yep, 5 exactly. Yeah.
Black women make up 2%. So me and Tracy is part of the unicorns that make up Black lawyers. So we hope the numbers increase, but that's what it is right now.
Yeah, it went up because the last I looked, it was 3, so it's 5 now, but it's still not good.
Okay, we got more of us going out passing the bar. I mean, 5% is still low, but I mean.
Right.
All right. So my next question is, we want to get a little insight into what side of the fence y'all on before we get into the nitty gritty of the topic today. So if you personally needed a family law attorney, what would you want, a male or a female attorney, or does it even matter to you?
I'm gonna let you go first, Marcus.
Oh, I'm taking a guy 110% of the time if it's family law. I never practice family law. I'm scared to practice family law. I'd rather deal with criminals all day. But I'm gonna take a guy because he probably used to getting beat over the head too, so he'd be able to fight really zealously on my behalf. That's what I'm going with.
Hands down. All right. What about you, Jacques? Tread carefully now.
Question. I guess I'll take a guy too, just because I was gonna say a lady, but then I heard Marcus, and that kind of made sense that, and then sometimes I think I've seen it to where even though a lady is representing a guy, she's still somewhat sympathetic to the other side a little bit. So I'm gonna go with Marcus.
You did what to her? Next thing you know, you got the pet and she got everything else. Nah, I ain't playing that game.
Okay.
I don't know about y'all. I don't know.
All right, well, that gives us some insight. We'll see what the other questions are. All right, so last kind of icebreaker question. So I don't know if y'all are on Instagram, Debt Free Dad. We know you're on YouTube, but if you guys have heard, and you probably have the term Lawyer Bae that has, kind of taken off in social media and is used for female attorneys that sort of look a certain way, right? They say Lawyer Bae, hashtag Lawyer Bae. Do you think that is sexist, or do you think that's good publicity for these female attorneys out here?
Well, go ahead, brother.
I think it's good publicity for them. I think they are using everything they have to their advantage. So I think that's good for them.
Yeah, I think it's definitely more of a positive. I mean, just in general, just from a definition standpoint, if I call a woman bae, it's normally associated with a positive thing. So if there's a video of you on the news giving an opening statement and you just happen to be looking extra sharp that day and this starts to trend, hey, take it for what it's worth. You in there doing your skill as an attorney, you doing your job, is whatever it takes to get eyes to what your skill set is. Sometimes, it's always it could be a positive thing. So that's how I look at it.
Yeah.
Interesting. Use what God gave you and positivity. Okay.
Yeah.
It sounds like y'all are, considering the other gender when you in this battle of who does it better. Let's get right into, I guess, the discussion questions, Tracy. We have a couple more icebreakers because we did a video about how to be a stellar writer and how to think like a lawyer. And oftentimes you have to put on the other hat. When you're in cases, you have to be able to see what the other side is, or sometimes you may have to represent somebody that you don't believe in, but you have to do what you have to do to be a proper advocate for them, right? So based off of that, I want you guys to fill in the blank. Women are better lawyers because. Who's gonna go first?
Don't all start talking at once.
You got it. This is all part of law school. You guys know, like, you may be given that side. If you're a debate team back, before law school, you have to take a topic and defend it. So why?
Right. And y'all both are criminal lawyers, so y'all know, sometimes your client may be guilty, but you gotta advocate for them. Damage control. So put on that hat. Women are better lawyers because even if you don't think that, we don't want to know. We just want to hear your best argument.
All right. You want me to go first?
Yeah.
All right. I think women. If I had to say, women are better lawyers because I think in some aspects when I think they're a little bit more emotional when it comes to their representation. So they can tend to get, if it's a woman defense attorney and she truly believes in what her client's telling her, I think they have that better emotional attachment, which in some instances it could work out to be very favorable because it just increases the level of zealousness that a woman is willing to represent with her client. And I think it gives them a little insight because I think they're a little bit better with that emotional to be able to understand if it's like something civil, family law, where both sides are coming from, where, oftentimes, I think, the opposite could tend to get tunnel vision. I think they may have a little bit better insight in examining both sides of the coin, so to speak.
I just want to piggyback a little bit off what Marcus said. I think women could be better because they are more passionate. Like you said, they can get more passionate into it. And then I think women could be better just because, I think their approach might be a little bit more humble than a guy's approach. They might come across more. Let me find the right word. They may not come across maybe as cocky as a guy might come across, especially if a guy feels like he's right or the law's on his side of different things. I think a woman may be able to present it in a different way that doesn't come across as, cocky, and they can be maybe a little bit more humble.
Okay. Well, I don't know if I'm really convinced by saying, but I appreciate the effort.
I'll take the flip side of that.
Okay.
You know, okay, so we're gonna put on the other hat, even if we may not actually believe this, but men saying men are better lawyers because, and I'm gonna kind of transition from what Jacques and Marcus, you touched on it too. I think men can be better lawyers because they are so confident, wrong and strong. I mean, I've seen some men in the courtroom like, you know, that ain't what the law says, but that's all you have, and you're gonna go with it until some people start to believe you. I've seen some men be so wrong and strong that they can even have the judge thinking like, well, you know, counsel, they know that that's not the law. They like, you know, I hear what you're saying. Let me take it under advisement. Like now he was just so confident that you even starting to believe his bull. So I think that can be a positive on the flip side where men can be so confident that it actually works to their client's benefit, especially in negotiations. I know you guys probably have seen articles about men, you know, and salary negotiations and things like that. And I think that transfers into the courtroom sometimes, or outside of court when you're negotiating for your client. Men may have a tendency to be a little bit not as risk averse. So they'll, you know, take it and say, hey, let's see what happens. Let's push it a little further where women may be a little bit more reserved in that front. Sometimes they can end up getting a better result for their clients. So that would be my argument for why men can be better attorneys than women.
Okay, Trace. Okay.
I put on the other hat. I put on the other hat.
Cat. It's like,
Okay, I would say men make better lawyers because they are working in a male-dominated field. I mean, you have no choice to be you're in the majority. People are not going to second guess and question you as much when you're in the majority, right? So I think just for that reason, just the fact that their name, their image is splattered everywhere, people are going to be more likely to believe them. So I think that's what makes better lawyers.
That was safe.
Yeah, you told the line there. Good job, counselor.
You're going to have people in the comment section talking about me and giving you the thumbs up.
All right. Well, okay. That is the icebreaker section. I think women and men have different qualities. I honestly think it comes down to the person, right? If you walk into a room and see a litigator that is a Houston woman litigator, like you see her, like she has a reputation. She's built that for herself. It's not necessarily because she's a woman. She just is a beast, and she just so happens to also be a woman. So I think it depends on is case specific. And some people are better writers than litigators, right? So when you talk about who's better, are you talking about in the courtroom? Are you talking about do they win cases? Are you talking about on paper, do they win motions? Like when you say better, what do you mean when you say that? So we're going to kind of like talk a little bit about digging a little bit deeper into it, but I think it's a lot of, like in law school, it depends. Like that's usually the answer to a lot of things. Like who makes better law? It depends. It depends who you're talking to. It depends on like what the circumstances. So go ahead,
So
Trace.
let's have into the discussion. And we touched on it a little, talking about emotions. I think, Marcus, you brought that up. But have you ever seen a female attorney who you thought was too emotionally involved? And if you have, give us an example of that scenario.
I'll say yes, I have. And emotion, like I said, it carries everything. Whatever is normally a person's strongest asset, oftentimes is also their biggest weakness as well. And I know one instance, this was, back in the day, trial attorney work. I'm in domestic violence court, and the prosecutor was like a former victim's witness individual, so they really interacted. And so she had a tendency to grab onto a set of facts, even no matter what facts may have been there to the counter. But because she had that previous work where she worked with victims and saw this so much, it was a lot of times where, she really got torched in trial. I mean, I can remember bringing cases up and the judge like, are we really trying this case? And it was because that emotion from working with that victim, getting their feedback, she just bought into it so much. She kind of had blinders on to pertinent facts that were just really unfavorable to her case.
I agree. And I mean, if I could piggyback on what Marcus said, recently, speaking in domestic violence, I had a case where the district attorney and I had agreed on a plea. I always and I know Marcus feels this, you always try to find a dismissal, find a path to dismissal when you get the criminal clients, but sometimes that path just might not be there. So we came to a plea agreement, and it was actually, what was ironic about it was the judge actually rejected the plea agreement because we speculate, but we think she had some things, either family member or something that happened or domestic violence, and she just, because of the cases, just the nature of the case, she didn't know any facts about the case, just the nature of the case being a domestic violence case, she just didn't want to accept the plea. And I know we're talking about lawyers, but even when they get to be judges, it's kind of like, maybe that's off topic, but sometimes with these judges that got in on that wave when Harris County voted all the black girl magic judges, like 19 to 22 of them, some of them have either forgotten what it's like to be a lawyer, or they just get up there and I don't know, maybe they become drunk with power, but it's kind of, sometimes they let their emotions kind of get in the way of just being a judge and judgment on the facts. Speculate, but we think she had some things, either family member or something that happened with domestic violence, and she just, because of the cases, just the nature of the case, she didn't know any facts about the case, just the nature of the case being a domestic violence case, she just didn't want to accept the plea. And I know we're talking about lawyers, but even when they get to be judges, it's kind of like, maybe that's off topic, but sometimes with these judges that got in on that wave when Harris County voted all the black girl magic judges, like 19 to 22 of them, some of them have either forgotten what it's like to be a lawyer, or they just get up there and I don't know, maybe they become drunk with power, but it's kind of, sometimes they let their emotions kind of get in the way of just being a judge and judgment on the facts. Now, I know that's a little bit off just being a lawyer, but, some of these judges, like I said, too, have gotten to the point where, they kind of are getting off of what is the law versus what are your emotions, how do you feel about it type of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
A good point. And I think the judges tie in too, because they, they are attorneys. So that ties in. So we see how you feel about or your experiences.
Tell us how you really feel,
right.
Jacques.
Your experiences.
Hey,
Yes.
He said that hit a sore spot for him. All
Yeah,
right, let's jump into the guy side of things. We talk about women. So do you think, based off of that, women are known to be emotional? Do you think men are too cocky? Like, do they have you got a little bit too much confidence, so you shouldn't have that much confidence? Both of y'all, do y'all feel like y'all exude confidence, like to the point of being cocky sometimes because you're a man?
Go ahead, brother.
You said me?
Yeah, go ahead, brother.
Well, see, my friends and family, we joke all the time about the black man confidence. So, I'm always gonna be confident. I try to feel like I'm coming across humble, but I don't know. Maybe I can't speak for how it comes across to other people, but I try to suppress it. I try to stay confident, not cocky, because that could adversely affect your client as well. If you're negotiating, let's say, a civil deal, like an employment deal, it does help your client if the opposing counsel likes you, or at least is like, okay, this guy's not a jerk. I can kind of relate to this guy. Or even with the prosecutors, if you get a reputation, for being a certain way and rubbing people the wrong way, maybe it hurts your client sometimes, versus if they kind of know you for, hey, he's a good lawyer, he fights for his clients, but we still respect him, and he doesn't get cocky, and he's easy to work with, even though we're adversarial. So I think I try to suppress it, but I mean, I have seen some guys who are very cocky, but I think the cockiness comes from their success. So I've seen some guys who have been very successful as litigators, and I think the success kind of helps fuel that, or I don't know if the cockiness fuels the success or the success fuels the cockiness, but they do have good records as litigators, and I guess it kind of does get, into them being cocky a little bit. So
I would agree. I think what you brought up was a good point. I think the success fuels cockiness. I know early on, I'm gonna be upfront. I want my attorney, if I want somebody representing me, I want them to be a little bit cocky. If I'm buying a house, I want my agent to be a little overconfident. And I kind of take that approach as a litigator. You can be overconfident, have confidence, be a little cocky, and not be a jerk. I mean, I don't think there'll be a prosecutor out there who will say, "Oh, I'm a bad person to work with." But no, it's been times where, okay, you don't want to give me the plea, you're gonna give me what I want, or it's going to be brutal for you. What you want to do. I mean, sometimes it gets to that. Sometimes you're negotiating with pharmaceutical companies, hey, you don't got to always show it, but it is an adversarial process. And even though I may smile and be humble, in the back of my head to my client, I'm like, we about to go in here and stomp a mud hole in these people because I'm going to get what I want and we're going to get what we want. Don't be scared to walk away because sometimes you got to push them. And that's just kind of my approach. I will tell you, no one I've worked with, as far as prosecutors, have ever said I was, cocky or a little bit arrogant in my abilities as a counsel. But it is something that I get from, my peers tell me that all the time, and the fact that I get it from my peers, I take that as a good thing.
Tiptoeing over the line between confidence and arrogance. Y'all like, we're not there, but we know we're confident in our abilities, but we're not going to be too arrogant. Male attorneys, sometimes as a female attorney, or a woman, male and female are for animals, women attorney versus man attorney, I think sometimes you don't have to say much and you can still get stuff done. Like, you don't have to be a bulldog at everything and still can be a silent killer. So I think sometimes maybe men may underestimate women attorneys, and then that could be to their detriment because, like, they know what they're doing. They just ain't got to be loud like y'all doing.
Right.
And I know,
yes, man.
yeah, and I know, like, me personally, I'm gonna kill you on paper. That's my thing. I don't love being in the courtroom. I do when I have to, but I'm the silent killer. Like, I'm coming for you on that paper. And I think I know more female attorneys who are better writers than they are orators. So they may not come across in the courtroom as bulldogs or whatever compared to the men, but they're gonna win that motion and they're never gonna get to the hearing anyway because they're gonna beat you on paper. So it just depends. It depends.
Right. We didn't gotta go to court. Like, we go to court, we already lost. We didn't gotta go to court.
Maybe I am arrogant because as soon as you said that, my thought was, I was like, nah, I'm killing them on paper and in oral arguments. Let's go.
Like, I'm killing them in both places.
I'm like, what? Come on, let's do it.
Well, you're finding something else about yourself, huh, Marcus?
Right.
Yeah, I was like, maybe I am arrogant. Let me go back and think about that. But it's funny because I'll tell you, I guess I'll preface this by, let me say something very positive so the women don't beat me up. If I was ever charged with something, 2 of the top 3 attorneys that I would want representing me are female attorneys. I tell you typically why I'm not drawn to female attorneys. And these 2 female attorneys, they badass, but they reflect characteristics that I have. They aren't the quiet type because these are people who are, been serving as who's the chief public defender in the district now. You don't get in a position like that by not having arguments. So the way they carry themselves, they have an aggressive demeanor. And so that draws me to them. I don't think most women I see is like they don't have that. I'm not going to say self-confidence, but you have to have that extra gear that you can flip it to. Sometimes it takes that extra push, like you said, to get a judge to even second guess himself. And so, and even like you said, it happens in employment. I've been in situations where I hire attorneys and I'm sitting across the table and if we talk percentages, probably 90% of the male attorneys, they'll always bring up salary in their interview, which I think is the right point, because my belief is if you aren't going to argue zealously for your own salary, how you going to argue zealously for somebody in my office that you got to represent? So, but like clockwork, 90% of the men will bring up finance and won't delve around that topic. And some of it is because, social systems, how they gauge it, but the women rarely, you may get a small percentage of them who will really want to breach those topics and discuss those things that may be controversial or inappropriate, even if it's with arguing something on their own behalf.
And Marcus kind of brought up a point to say, like, men are talking about it. They like, we ain't come here to work for free. Like, what's up? And women, perhaps they may be bringing the issues, but then they're still getting paid less. And it's not necessarily attributable to whether they're being, whether they're more successful than men or not. They're just getting paid less than men just because they're women. And so I think that was a good segue. I think we're going out of order right now, but that's okay.
No, but go ahead. That
was a good segue into the next point. It says, it was an article on, we'll put the article in the description box, but there's an article that says if female attorneys were compensated according to how often they actually win cases, they'd be paid more than men. Says Premonition co-founder and CEO Guy Kurlansky. We just ran the biggest legal study on gender of all time, and at every level of practice, women came out ahead. Drops my now.
Well, I want to, in regards to that, I want to touch on what Marcus is saying. So, historically, well, one, you got to look at the history of how things came about. So, historically, back in the day, years and years ago, men were the one who was working, the women were at home. So society is looking at men to be the providers, things like that. And so, like Marcus is saying, closed mouths don't get fed. So if men are advocating for what they want to be paid, what they feel like they should be paid, and they're pushing that limit, towing that line, and women are more meek in that regard and just kind of accepting what comes to them, that's going to play a part into dividing that gap. If somebody's saying, hey, look, I need to be paid this is what I feel like I'm worth, and they go back and forth. Let's say when Marcus is saying he wants to hire somebody, let's say he's starting at, he wants to hire somebody at 75,000, right? Let's say the guy pushes him a little bit more and is like, you know what? I feel like I'm worth 90,000 for X, Y, Z, or let's say 100,000, right? Marcus takes that into consideration, and Marcus says, okay, well, you make some good points. Let's meet in the middle at 87.5, okay? And he pays 12,500 more than he wanted to pay. That guy made 12,500 more than he might have accepted because he pushed the line. Now, if that same lady, Marcus extends that same $75,000 offer, and she takes it and says, cool, that's the gap that's starting right there. He's at 87.5 because he pushed for it. She's at 75,000 because she just accepted it. So I think it's some different factors that go into that because, like he's saying, guys are going to push and toe that line, and more times than not, women are just going to take the salary that's offered to them. So I think those are some of the factors that goes into the gaps that are there. Because, I mean, like you said, if you're not going to advocate for your salary, he's not just going to just give it to you. So,
right.
Yeah.
That sounds like taking advantage of somebody.
No, it's not taking advantage. It's just,
as a budget you got fiscal obligations when you at that level and making those decisions, and it's less common that females and I think I don't even think is a confidence thing. I just think it's an uncomfortable conversation for them to have just based on how societal norms are. You know what I mean? And so this is a conversation I had with some of my homeboys. I was like, like in the NBA, this positionless basketball, you ain't gonna see somebody like 7'2", 300 pounds like Shaq playing in the NBA. It's just the 5 best players are out there. And so when you're talking about gender roles, and it's kind of I typically see when with female attorneys I work with gender roles, it confuses me because the gender roles should be breaking down. And if we're breaking down and saying everyone is on equal playing level, you can't have an instance where you want a gender role to come into play to be advantageous for you. Because I've seen that happen as well. And let me take that into a context of someone's coming in my office. I've got 2 employees, a guy and a female, and I got an operational issue. There's bad news for both of them, right? Bad news for both of them. If we're taking gender roles out of this thing, This is a business. Hey, you get your bad news, keep it moving, do what you need to do. You get your bad news, do what you need to do, keep it moving. I don't know how to react when I'm sitting in there and I'm talking to the woman and I give you the operational news that may not be good news. And all of a sudden there's the waterworks, there's the tears, I've seen women say, oh, I'm a woman and I have this and that. This brother got the same thing going on. He got a family too, but he got the news and I didn't even know how to handle the situation. I just did what I seen my old bosses do. I had tissue on my desk and I just slid them over there. I hit them and slid them over there. And I was like, wipe your tears and get yourself together. And when you're ready to talk, come back and talk to me. Because it was just an awkward, me as a black man, I don't want a woman in my office crying in general because that could be bad optics. Let's get that out there first. But it is really weird because they're scared to have those uncomfortable conversations about the extra salary or anything that may be pushing the limits of what they can get. But if it's a situation where they can make or use the female aspect to be advantageous, they'll turn it on in a heartbeat and expect it to work in their favor. And that just confuses me as somebody who's in operations. I'm like, wait. Where's this whole gender thing coming in now? All of that stuff wasn't present before. That's just kind of my take. Don't beat me up in the comments.
It confuses me too, because I mean, it confuses me. I think as far as the waterworks in the workplace, I've always been like, well, what are we crying about? This is just
okay, all right. I thought it was just me.
I mean, it could be. I might maybe I'll go home and cry to my husband or whatever, my family. But even then, I'm like, I'm not crying in my boss's office. So like, I don't know either. So I don't understand it either. But I mean, I guess different personalities, but maybe women would have been just like you, sliding the box of tissues over and said, come
Y'all
back
are
and
cold and heartless.
Man, we ain't got time for that emotion.
Like, what? Don't you want to cry with somebody else? But yeah, I don't know either. But yeah, we kind of got off. I don't know. But what were you gonna say, Larita?
No, we can move on. I think we can move. It's a good segue into I think what we were talking about is certain things. When we were talking about the iceberg and Jay was saying about how the lawyer baes were using what God gave them to their advantage, right? So it can work both ways, right? You being emotional, all women are not emotional, right? Let's start with that. But if you are an emotional person and using that to your advantage, right? Like maybe currying favor with the jury because you're an emotional person versus a man who seems very cold-hearted. These two, no, kidding. The jury might not like you as much. So I guess it depends on how you finesse that, right? Like you can finesse your God-given qualities, like your nice long legs or whatever, to get what you want, right? Emotionally, maybe crying, they'll feel bad for you, they won't fire you. Look at that. See, it could work to you. It could work to your advantage. Like, no, I don't need a tissue, I need the job. Thank you.
Right. So do you guys believe that certain types, so we have obviously different areas of law, criminal, employment, bankruptcy. Do you think that women tend to do better at certain areas of law? So women attorneys, let's say, are better family law attorneys, whereas male attorneys are better bankruptcy lawyers. Do you think it matters the area of law that the person is practicing?
Marcus, I'm gonna let you go ahead and start that one off.
Jacques, you've been quiet for a while.
I would. He let me go stand on the cliff. I know, man. I gotta take the shots first. It's all good. Stay behind me, brother. I would probably say, just in my experience, I think women are much better transactional attorneys. As if I had to break it out as transactional attorney, motions and that type of stuff versus litigators. I've worked with I've had clerkship at the federal level, the highest level of state courts, and a lot of those clerks are women who are outstanding writers, taught me how to write for many years. And that type of stuff where you're doing kind of that behind the scenes work, getting those oral arguments and everything ready so the justice can make a decision on. I think that's probably, if I could say in my experience, I think they tend to thrive in that aspect. more so than, when we're talking that litigation. Again, I just think that for me, I think having that extra gear where you can flip it from confidence to kind of arrogance, I think that's an invaluable skill set for a litigator. And I'm talking about, it may be, it could be different for somebody who's randomly in court, but I came from a place of where I had 300 open cases at any given time. I was in court Monday through Friday in front of a judge every day. So I've literally stood there waiting for my clients to come up, and I can see how the women handle themselves, how the men handle themselves. And I think that's just kind of how I would break it out. I think the men typically have a more of an advantage because of their, kind of arrogance and bravado, but I think that's more of an attribute in a litigation aspect.
I agree with Marcus, and I do want to, like he said, I think women are better writers, and because in my experience, what I've seen, a woman versus a man, a woman will research something to death. She will have the counter to the counter. She will have it to where she knows all the applicable cases. She's read all the supporting case law. And like you said, I think men are better at flying by the seat of their pants. Okay. So I think men are just better at getting thrown at, okay, hey man, we got to go in here for this here in 30 minutes. This is what's going on, blah, 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 blah. We got to get our stuff together. Let's go in here. And I think they're just quicker at coming up with things on their feet on the spot. Because from what I've observed, women that I've seen be litigators, a lot more of them, it seems like, will have kind of a script, right? A script that they'll either follow as far as their questions, when they're direct examining or cross-examining. Some of the guy litigators that I've seen, I think they do a better job. But like I said, they have an idea, like a roadmap of kind of what they're trying to get accomplished. But I think they do a better job of listening to maybe what the witness is saying, and then on cross kind of coming up with the questions, maybe as they're going to kind of get it to where they're going. So I just think men as attorneys, I think women are better preparers and get prepared better than men, but men are better at improvising and calling audibles, and as it goes, okay, they did it, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do it. So I think men are just better at improvising as attorneys than women are.
I was gonna have the comments blazing. I like it. I like it. They're gonna be coming.
We're better at bull, you know what?
Thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, I respect your perspectives, and I do think, like I mentioned before, I think sometimes it's just a matter of personalities. Like, if you're an alpha woman, you may be more aggressive than somebody who's not, right? So I think it depends on the person, not necessarily just the gender, because you may meet some males that are a little more passive than others, right? So we just have to pick some aggressive males on our panel today.
Right.
Y'all don't represent all of them, so I think it just depends. And if I was to walk into any courtroom and see a male, I wouldn't feel intimidated personally, like, oh, this is a guy. If I knew his track record and he was a beast, and I'm like, okay, I know how to prepare for it, but just off the top, just because he's a guy, I don't think I would feel intimidated just based on that factor, because I think I'm a little bit more confident, not cocky, but confident that, like, I know what I'm doing too. He can know what he's doing too, but now that I know y'all fly by, I really know, like, oh, I already researched and I'm confident about those. We got it. Don't worry.
It was funny because, when he was, talking about flying by the seat of your pants, it made me think of this one instance in the courtroom, and it was with that situation, the prosecutor who was previous victim work, so she would get so emotionally attached. And I remember beforehand, I was like, these facts just don't make sense. These facts, so this story just not adding up from what your person is telling you versus what I'm getting. And so she, we go to trial, and she put her witness on the stand, and she go through all this direct, and everything. She's like, it's your witness. And I leaned over to my guy, and this is how I think that outside of the box, because she was really a scripted type of person, the line of questioning. And that also comes with being the prosecutor. Prosecutors are real mechanical, and they don't really think outside the box. So she went through, asked her questions, and I looked at my client, and I was like, I said, how long you knew her? He was like, maybe, 10, 15 years. And I said, y'all from the same block, right? He was like, yeah. I was like, what's your nickname around the way? He was like, Peanut. And so I literally, my first question, I was like, how long have you known Peanut? And she was like, about 15 years. And I said, how did you know who I was talking about? Because she was like, oh, I don't know this guy. He just randomly came up and started doing this stuff. And so my next question was, well, how did you know who I was talking about when I said Peanut? And everybody stopped and turned, and the judge just put her hand on her head like this. And I think that was one of those situations where, I was pulling something out of my, I was like, I'm going to just throw this on the wall and see if it stick. And luckily, she was like, oh, yeah, that's Peanut. So I think that does have some validity with the creativity or the ability to pull BS out of nowhere.
right. Because what it does is it throws the person who's researched and done everything and has put down in their mind or on paper, it's going to go like this. I'm going to ask these questions. He's going to ask these questions. And I'm going to do this. I'm going to say that. And when you come with a wrinkle, it's I've seen people when you come with a wrinkle where they not, I'm sure when you looked over at that prosecutor, Marcus, you probably was like,
right, it's not a script.
Right, yeah. I was definitely arrogant that way. If you saw after I asked that question, I leaned back in my chair, crossed my legs.
It probably blew her mind. She didn't even know.
We got it. Before we close out, we usually have people who are aspiring lawyers. So as lawyers, do you have any brief word of encouragement to anybody that's aspiring to be a lawyer, perhaps a litigator, since you guys both did that? I think that's the more popular thing when people think about lawyers. So do you guys have any brief couple of words for them to encourage them? Don't say don't do it.
Don't say don't do it.
I'm not going first either.
Jacques, you gotta go.
I'll go first. Well, okay.
Don't look so distressed.
I
know. You remember this?
Don't look so distressed. You're going to scare the children.
The first piece of advice I want to give anybody that wants to be a litigator, a lawyer, things like that. The number one thing, the most important thing that I use to guide my career is what you want to do is you want to under promise and over deliver. Okay, because it's part psychological. So let's say you get a client, right? And let's say they were in a car accident, right? And let's say the policy limits are 30,000, okay? In your mind, you can know that you can get that 30,000 for them, right? But don't tell them you can get that 30,000 for them. Tell them, you might tell them, hey man, I think I can get you 15,000. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Then you set the bar there. So if they thinking, oh man, okay, he can give me 15,000. Okay, cool. Then when you come and double that and get the policy to 30,000, then they ready to write a review. Right. They ready to tell everybody they know about. Oh man, he's great, man. Because on the flip side, here's this: if you tell them, I can get you 30,000, man. Don't worry, we can get limits. I know I can get it. And then you stuck with the insurance company like, oh man, 20 is our top offer, and that's it. Now you effed because now that client, you didn't put that expectation ahead. Right. He's about to give me 30,000. Right. And tell them the bad news. Oh man, I can go and get 20,000. Now they writing you 1 star and telling everybody, man, this dude's a bum, man. He said he was gonna give me this. So the number one thing I can tell you is under promise, over deliver. Hey man, maybe I can get you a deferred on this case. When you get the dismissal, you looking like Johnny Cochran.
The only thing I would say is one, like y'all, I know y'all talk about on y'all channel all the time. Law school is a big financial commitment, so make sure it's something you want to do. And you're not doing it based on this expectation that you're going to get this large salary because that doesn't happen for everybody. And I think the other thing is if you're talking about being a litigator, and this goes for anything, you can always improve your skills at any aspect to be better than you were the day before. My first day on the job, I had 2 trials because the judge looked at the person who was my mentor and said, give him 2 cases that's going to trial because I don't want him to be scared to have trials moving forward. So you can always improve whether you're doing transactional work, litigator. You can, if you want that little arrogant switch that I'm talking about, you can increase your skill set to be able to have that and pull it out of your toolbox when you need it.
Okay. Just one more thing I wanted to say is that you have to see, especially if you're doing plaintiff side or if you're doing criminal defense work, if you're doing things where your clients are people and not businesses, one thing, the main thing, and this isn't even legal work, okay? The main thing that people just want to feel like, they just want to feel like their lawyer's working. So
Yeah.
whether it's just
Availability.
just as best as you can, try to just keep in touch with your client as in touch with them as possible, because it's happened to me. You know, I'm getting better. And like Marcus said, you got to get better. I'm getting better at that. But early on in my career, it was, hey, I'll get back to you when I have an update. If you don't hear from me, I'll have an update. You will be surprised at how many people just want to hear you give them a phone call, send them an email.
It's funny you said that, because I did a video about the top mistakes new lawyers make, and communication was one of them. So check out that video if you haven't already checked that video out. I'm glad he said it though too, to kind of like, confirmation that like people want to have communicate so that they won't think that you're doing something wrong and file a bar complaint against you later. All right, so we thank you guys, Marcus and Jacques, for joining us on TXC Tells All today. They came with some good information. I don't know, Tracy, who do you think, at the end of the day, who does it best?
I mean, we had the study, so I mean, women out here winning cases. Women out here winning cases. I mean, the numbers speak for themselves.
I need to check some data points. I need to check some data points on that study. I don't know. I need to check. What do you define as a win? If a person gets 5 years instead of 30, that's a win in my book.
That's a win.
Like, what is your source? Like, your source. Listen, we'll put all the sources in the description box. We thank you all for joining us. We hopefully Marcus and Jacques will want to come back to another panel with us.
I want to connect with Marcus off screen of this. So yeah,
there you go. Get
that going.
And make sure you check out Marcus's YouTube channel, Debt Free Dad. He gives us some nuggets of advice for personal finance. He does like stocks, investing, all that kind of stuff. So he's a lawyer by day and a YouTuber by night, like just like Tracy and I. So we're all on this journey together. So comment below if you want us to do another topic. We're open to any new ideas. So we'll see you in the next video.
Yes, thank y'all. Take care. All right.